Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how the internet has now kill switches brought into effect. Now this isn't entirely new, okay? So again, I want to just kind of bring you up to speed with what's going on. Obviously, a lot of laws, a lot of things regarding the internet, the last bastion of true freedom, has, sort of started happening all over the world, right? We kind of laughed probably like 4 or 5 years ago. Oh, look at that Chinese Great Firewall. Ain't no fucking way that's gonna happen on our side of the pond. Well, today we actually have a court-ordered writ that you can read right over here. The state of Texas against a online company known as Kick Online Entertainment. They do not run Kick.com before any of you ask in the comment section below. I'm going to censor the URL here because, genuinely speaking, the website that was shut down, I am not actually anywhere close to partial. The website that Texas kind of went after over here is one where, from my understanding, and again, I haven't jumped onto their website to truly properly research this, but other law enforcement agencies, particularly in the Netherlands, all over the world have looked in and actually shut down their website because there's probably illegal content hosted on there, okay? So I'm not here to sit down and play defense for a truly disgusting website. The actual website today doesn't really matter because what we're about to talk here is Texas finding a way to implement kill switches on the rest of the fucking world, okay? So let's read this order here, right? So Texas, from a writ of attachment, and the court reviewed the applications and affidavits on file in this matter. After considering the pleadings and other papers on file with the court, the grounds presented, yada yada yada, the court finds and concludes that the state is entitled to a writ of attachment. The court finds that the following domain name is owned by the defendant and maintained by a company known as VeriSign Incorporated. This website, which we're going to refer to as Website X going forward, has basically been grabbed, right? Basically, the domain has effectively been taken. So this domain name, if they even want to replevy it, basically they have to file the court with a bond in the amount of $9.1 million. Now, this actually had a lot to do with a Texas age assurance law. So that law was HB number 1181, which was restricting access to, websites that host material harmful to minors, okay? Now, in this case, the website that Texas actually went after was very much a website that I would say was harmful to minors, harmful to really anybody, okay? To give you quick context, the actual website over here, the company Kick Online Entertainment, is one of these companies that's self-admittedly moral-free. So I'll let you put into your head what their idea of moral-free content online is, especially in the adult sphere, okay? So again, what's interesting to note over here, obviously, is, again, this is all the way back in July 1st of 2026, so not super terribly long ago, literally like last month. But again, this is a story that's been brewing and one thing that I've been looking over, through the course of time. Basically, the legal victory Texas had says that they can enforce laws against foreign companies, okay? So basically, let's say that you're living somewhere outside of the United States, right? Accessing a .com website can basically be determined. The permission allowed is up to one state, it seems, right? Texas can decide at this point if the website violates, it seems, their laws. They can go to the third party, which in this case is VeriSign, and they can basically just, seize or grab or prevent access to these domains. Effectively meaning that if you don't play by this state's rules, the rest of the world effectively gets access to websites effectively gutted and killed. And this sets kind of a landmark where now any state can decide what they consider to be obscene. If their laws are getting violated, they now have a pathway to start issuing kill orders all over the internet, right? So basically, this site violated Texas's age verification law, and subsequently they obtained a default judgment and a permanent injunction because the content was so deplorable, even the actual website, the company behind it, didn't want to actually go to court. So you don't go to court, default judgments get handed out, and that's why the amount of money for the bond is actually so high. So Kick Online, openly describing itself as moral-free, ignored the lawsuits, refused to comply, and continued publishing and distributing harmful material that was accessible to minors in Texas. Now, to secure compliance and safeguard the kids, they had obtained a court order writ that maintains the .com registry to place the domain on a registry lock hold or similar status. Under the court's orders, Kik may only seek to replevy the domain by publishing the bond. So again, remember here, the content on this site is so deplorable that, again, may I remind you, it was actually taken down around May of 2026, right? CNN was investigating it. A lot of people are investigating it to the point where the Dutch Public Prosecution Office decided to launch an investigation into website X. And when they started looking into it, they found through their analysis 20,000 videos posted on the site's front page in the first week of May found that disgusting terms like incest, obviously teens, a lot of stuff that would probably, still show up on other sites, but here, because it was moral free, people started to look at other videos that, again, had tags that were obviously tags referencing illegal material, okay? And ultimately, at the end of the day, one of the largest viewed videos, 4.2 million, had literally the R word kind of attached as a tag. So you can imagine the kind of content that is over here. Nobody is defending, I would say. No one normal should really go out and say, you know what, guys? Look, I get it, free speech is a whole thing over there, but to be honest with you, I'd never sit and defend websites that are so loosey-goosey with the content posted on here. Again, my view on adult content is something where, if I'm going to be completely real with you, I think that it is very damaging to the human brain, especially a developing human brain. I sort of understand why people are putting it amongst themselves to restrict access to this kind of content. I, however, still think instead of implementing shit like what we're talking about today, where anybody can issue kill switches, so now states can kind of decide, hey, we don't agree with this kind of content. What's to stop a content from looking at something like religious content down the road or any other sensitive content and thinking, man, we consider that obscene to people in our area, let's start blocking it. And not only do we block it from our state, because we can enforce this on VeriSign now, we can decide, hey, listen, this is now blocked internationally, globally, through the .com domain. So the actual hatch over here that some could think is an escape is using country code TLDs, which again, all of these different countries that you're seeing over here could be reflected and probably used as exit hatches. But the reality of it is that just because these are, attributed to certain countries doesn't necessarily mean that, they're running these zones, right? A lot of these are still ultimately controlled by US infrastructure. The only ones that are kind of, free from this are places like .ru, .cn, and those also come with their own set of caveats. It's not that their governments can't also enforce similar laws or holds. So the reality of this is that what is basically the method of abuse is, so for instance, you can go to any foreign company and say, listen, we don't agree with your stuff, we're going to enforce our rules on you. And if you don't comply, there's a default judgment. And once that judgment comes through, it seems that, as Texas has shown, you can use these writs and basically put holds on a lot of these domains, which effectively just means that they can decide internationally who gets to visit these websites and who doesn't. From my understanding, again, if anybody wants to clarify this, please feel free, but it really is the attack on the internet infrastructure that is kind of the story, right? So again, the reality of it is I'm not here to defend this website. What I am here to talk about, and what's more interesting, is the mechanism used, okay? Again, when you look into the adult industry, it's disgusting that even on the most popular sites, like The Hub, for instance, there is an interesting story that I covered called Trafficking Hub like 5-6 years ago. And since then, I've been absolutely no gooner. I'm not against if you goon, I don't really care. But to be honest with you, I think that once you learn the amount of crimes that constantly happen in the adult space, where even on like the most safe sounding websites, right? Even the most, normal sites, I guess, like The Hub, there have been cases like the Girls Do Porn incident where, again, women were being basically pressured into doing this kind of content. I mean, when you watch somebody on the internet doing this kind of stuff, you have to think to your head, right? Are they drugged? Are they even participating in this video with sound mind? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into your head. And once you see kind of how the sausage is made, you really want to stay far away from it, right? But again, the website we're talking about over here just went to the most extreme ends and decided, you know what, we're going to start just just having a moral free zone, if you will, too. Again, you can just keep into your head how fucked things can get. But the president over here could easily look at a website like 4chan, for instance, right? Which has been targeted by the United Kingdom in a lot of cases, Ofcom. Now, I am a 4chaner. I like actually exploring, things like paranormal, but the only board I look at, okay? I enjoy boards like this where I can read about people talking about cults, where I can see people talking about stupid shit like MK Ultra. Well, not really stupid MK Ultra, but again, I like watching that sort of paranormal side, that creepypasta side of the internet. There are a lot of 4chan boards or chan-like boards that are really, really filthy. Places like 8chan, for instance, which have been delisted from Google search, which have been terminated from operating service by, places like Cloudflare, because ultimately, at the end of the day, content, that's hosted on these platforms gets into the point where they could be hosting illegal stuff. Forget the, hate speech stuff for a second here. We are talking actual illegal, possible CSAM material that is hosted on these places. Even though a lot of these websites do put up the, hey, don't post this on our web, the actual moderation is so loosey-goosey that stuff like this ultimately ends up there, which is one of the reasons why places don't want to work with them. The thing that ultimately comes out from this whole situation is it's not that Texas decided to shut down access to this website because they felt that the content on there was super duper severe. They only issued this because they didn't want to add age assurance to their platform. Which, again, I feel like if you're somebody that wants to be on the morally right side of things, it's not the, age assurance, giving your ID is not the fucking, end-all be-all to, hey, at least you can access, possibly illegal material on this website, right? If you were really morally against it, you wouldn't just say, hey, here's an age gate or something. As long as you follow the rules and give us money, you can continue to host your stuff and people can access it, right? I get the whole idea of freedom of speech, but generally obscenity, there's a fine line a lot of these places play. I don't really think Texas cares so much about the content that's on this site. More so, can their rules necessarily be enforced is what I'm tending to notice. Now, one actual, research that I've seen, and unfortunately, a lot of this stuff also comes from the other side of the aisle, which is the hub, or a lot of these websites that are facing the situation where they have to comply with age verification. And here's the thing, when you have age verification, it kills viewership on your site. It puts a lot of financial targets on your back. So obviously, it's not like the hub or any of these websites really care about our kids being exposed or anything. It's more that their bottom line is actually being threatened. Which is why in a story like this, I don't take anybody's side, but the side of your actual freedom, right? I think if you really want to combat disgusting illegal material on the internet and really combat the people that visit it, you should probably teach your kids, or at least, push some form of therapy for people that are actually consuming, some of the most depraved shit on the internet. And for children, I feel like if you have kids, you should really sit down and talk to them and tell them, listen, you start watching gooning material, it's only going to start escalating. Shit's like a drug, man. Okay, once you take that one line of coke, you're probably not going to be satiated once you develop sort of a habit to it. You're only going to want to go harder and harder and harder. But ultimately, at the end of the day over here, one fact that's sort of come out is a lot of people that sort of deal with these compliant websites realize, I'm just going to go to a website where it's legal to view this shit, right? Which is why, research-wise, 45% of people that, are subject to this kind of stuff are now visiting websites that aren't compliant. And because they're not compliant with laws, the kind of shit that they host gets darker and darker and darker. Even website X that was blocked by Texas is a website that unfortunately somebody can still access. The only reason Texas was able to do this kind of stuff is they went to VeriSign. VeriSign is hosted in the United States. And VeriSign was where, again, Texas went to. They were like, hey, listen, you got to give us that .com domain. And that was effectively taken by Texas and is now being held until, of course, the company behind Website X pays up and ponies up their dues and decides to get their domain back, which really isn't that important because the kind of people that want to access that content, all they have to do is access it through a different domain, or again, go through places like the dark web, if they have sort of a dark web onion domain hosting as well too, which really shows that internet kill switches don't really address the problems that society, like, you're not really preventing people from accessing illegal material. All you're really doing is making it annoying, which, yeah, sure might deter one or two people, but the people that are genuinely going to these places will find their access, okay? These are those dark corners of the internet that usually the people visiting them know that they're playing a game of cat and mouse or whack-a-mole on the internet anyways. What it has shown is Texas, and I guess any state at this point, can effectively target the internet infrastructure and start enforcing their own state laws and affecting not just the federal United States, but the rest of the world, okay? Because remember, a lot of internet infrastructure is kind of tied into the United States. It's really the US that gets to fucking decide what the rest of the world can do or can't do. Like, for instance, the UK can have a whole bunch of laws, but it doesn't really matter much because it's up to the US to enforce UK law, which is the reason why places like 4chan are still accessible and the reason why they really don't care. But imagine if those same laws, which now they're starting to prop up in the US, well, now a lot of these judges can actually just go straight to the infrastructure. And when the US states start doing it, well, there's not much you and I or anybody can do at that point. It's pretty much a done and done deal, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty much over. You know, if you kind of think about it, banning things doesn't necessarily lead to a good solution almost all the time. When has banning really ever worked, right? Like, back in the day, alcohol was banned in the United States. What did people start doing? They started turning into organized crime and purchasing their booze and liquor that way, right? So it was a bad situation. What happens in places like Saudi Arabia where alcohol is banned? Well, what happens is, unfortunately, there is a market of black market alcohol that you can get. And this, according to actual researchers and people, scientific experts in that region, have said that it's more likely to be contaminated with substances like methanol, for instance. A severe medical conundrum, right? Where again, things are banned. Now you got a black market where you got people trying to make an extra buck off of individuals that are committing an illegal crime. They go out, they're buying whiskey, they're buying alcohol that obviously could be contaminated, they're damaging themselves. And what are they going to do? Are they going to go to the police of vice and virtue and tell them, yeah, I was trying to get drunk, boss, but I guess I went blind drinking bad booze, bad moonshine. Again, it's a bad situation. I don't think bans are necessarily a great thing. Obviously, when it comes to things like CSAM or illegal content, obviously, it's not just bans that should be involved there. It should be cross-regional, cross-international law enforcement work, which should shut down a lot of these networks and combine that with, obviously, educating the masses or teaching parents about parental control so kids don't go and visit them. There should be monitoring on the internet. You shouldn't just give the internet freely to somebody. You should obviously be monitoring at your home level, right? I think all of this really just needs a lot of education, and I don't think states should just get carte blanche access into deciding what you and the rest of the world can access or cannot access. Again, this is a website that I'll call Website X, and it is a disgusting, deplorable website. And I'm not shedding a tear that it's fucking gone, okay? Honestly, it could stay gone for good. But the thing about it is now that we found a way to kill switch the internet, what stops places like Texas or California or New York or any state in the country to issue its own laws and say, hey, now we don't want 4chan to exist, okay? 4chan is on our fucking radar. All of a sudden, you know, instead of even going to the courts or dealing with this in a legal battle where people can actually take these ideas to the, you know, to the judicial system and argue it back and forth, states can just go in and be like, all right, we're just going to go to the actual infrastructure, get a writ, and boom, those sites are gone. You fail to comply with age assurance, well, we can just shut you down, okay? As simple as that. That is a fucking wild, wild thing to see, man. Yeah, we are actually straight up attacking the infrastructure. And honestly, do I expect this to stick around? I would imagine if this goes to places like the Supreme fucking Court, maybe they can overrule this, but that would probably be a case by case. Again, I'm not even a lawyer, right? Like, I don't even fucking know. It just seems like Texas or really any of the Keystone states can push a law in their state, and as long as it passes, which it seems like all over the states it is, then they can use that law to go to the actual non-party infrastructure and just shut things down all over the world. So, wild shit to see. It's weird when you see the internet being policed and governed by individuals that just don't understand the technical infrastructure. And now that the story is sort of public everywhere, now Website X is known by tons more people than ever before, which means that, you know, if they had viewership beforehand, now they're going to have even more viewership once people who are curious for this kind of stuff start delving deeper and deeper into it. It's just a fucking rabbit hole that can only be addressed by proper, sound, logical thinking, parenting your kids, and honestly, holding the government to task when they start going way too far, which it seems like in this case, you have to look at what could happen in the future, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.